Welcome to Go Get Great, the podcast for aspiring entrepreneurs and ambitious small business owners. I'm your host, Brittany, owner of Brittany Miller Socials and mother of three. Go Get Great is all about helping you make life and business work together. You'll learn about the fumbles that helped get me and my guests to where we are today so you don't have to make them. So come join the journey with Go Get Great. Good morning and welcome back to another episode of the Go Get Great podcast. I'm very excited to be joined by special guest Rochelle today from Dsarskin. Dsarskin, as you can imagine, is a boutique skincare and home sense online store. They're also a family and women-owned business with a mission to bring high-quality products that work for your self-care experience. Dzar started in the living room with one idea: to make products that actually work and wouldn't do more harm than good. They really focus on their products being made without harmful ingredients or chemicals and things that support the overall environment. So Rochelle has a background in marketing design and her partner has a background in operations, and together they brought to life Dsarskin, which started with skincare and now has expanded into other products. So I am so excited to have her here today chatting with us about her experience as a product-based business and how it is similar and or different from being a service-based provider, and what insights she can share about actually running a product-based business, maybe things she learned that worked or didn't work, and just kind of help you if you're thinking of starting a product-based business, consider some of the things that as a service-based provider I don't know. So she has so much wonderful wisdom to share with us. I'm excited for this episode. So without further ado, welcome Rochelle. Okay. Good morning and welcome to the Go Get Great podcast. I'm so excited for you to be here today and talk about what it's like to have a product-based business, because that is definitely not my area of expertise. But before we dive into our topic today, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in your own words, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me as well. So my name's Rochelle. I am one of the founders of Dsarskin, which started off as actually just a skincare brand and transformed into fragrances, so room sprays, candles, things of that nature. We house 70% sustainable products, naturally sourced. And we cater to a luxury audience, and I'm really looking forward to being a part of this podcast and sharing a little bit more about owning a product-based business.
Amazing. Well, I always like to ask, because I'm a curious person, how did you get started in as like a product-based business owner? What sparked your skincare line?
It's funny because we actually started, so the business was actually accessories.
Mm.
So it was accessories, handmade. It started off as a hobby, and then I was a bit overwhelmed, so I took a bit of a break and then came back to the business and said, okay, like I don't know exactly what I want to do with it. What's the future of this business?
Mhm.
And at the time, I, you know, like I mentioned, I was a bit overwhelmed, so I took a bit of a break. I had actually a skin disorder.
Mm.
I went to the doctor. They gave me all the medicine that they could give me, and nothing worked. And I ended up doing my own research on organic ways to, solve the issue essentially. And I found a few things, mixed up a few concoctions, and it ended up working out. And I had a conversation with my family, and I was like, oh, like this thing happened, and I ended up using, these combination of products, and they're like, oh, so why don't you actually do this as a business? Because you also love skincare, you also,
Mm.
it just makes sense. I've worked for like Sephora, L'Oreal in the past as well, so it just
Wow.
made sense. So yeah, it just started off like that, and I roped my sister in to do candles and all the fragrance stuff, and it was definitely tough at the beginning because it wasn't something that it was a lot intricate than face value,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's how we started.
Amazing. And how long have you been working in your business?
So the original business was actually started about 6 years ago, but this business about 2 years now.
Okay, very
Mhm.
nice.
Yeah.
So I know product-based businesses have an extra layer of work and planning when you first get started to kind of create all of the branding and packaging, which thankfully service-based providers don't have to worry about. I would love it if you could kind of walk through what that process looked like for you, how long it took, what you enjoyed,
Mhm.
maybe what took a lot longer than you expected. I find it very fascinating how all of that comes together.
Yeah. Oh, so when we started, we were looking at the cheapest alternatives. That
Mm.
was actually how we started. I think the biggest thing is understanding what products you're going to start with, the lines, and then the feature of the product.
Mm.
We chose to start cheaper just because budget wise it made sense. So we looked at different companies that, wholesaled certain types of products or certain types of bottles.
Mhm.
And we ended up just sourcing a couple of random things just to, have a base. And then we also looked at colors, right? So what our aesthetics was going to be. And then all of our bottles basically reflected the aesthetic that we wanted.
Mhm.
So we did that. In terms of labeling, it really was a throw up. I'm going to be quite honest. It was a throw up. And that was just to get the ball going because we just wanted to like start. So I,
Mhm.
I would say I guess a corporate term is like we try to be as agile as possible. So we adapted with time just because, again, it made sense budget wise.
Mhm.
When we got to, I think, our first year, we're like, okay, so this is how it looks now. Let's try to, slowly take our best sellers and start, really sitting and like branding them properly and, actually put in the time and effort to do that. So we actually did that with our candles. That was a bit of a process because we thought about our customer. We thought about, okay, so what do we want our customer to feel when they pick up our products?
Mhm.
The types of people that we wanted to attract overall. And you know, is it going to be general neutral or what have you, right? We thought about all that stuff. And we came up with a first sketch, talked about it, went through the motions, had some outside opinions, and then did it actually digitally and had like a rendering and, kind of figured, okay, so this is the type of writing that we're going to add, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. And then we went to search for a vendor. We happened to use just AliExpress just because
Oh.
that's easiest place to find
Mhm.
decent vendors. And I'm a veteran in it. I've been working with them probably since they started. So
Mhm.
them meaning I've been on a platform for that long. And so um I'm familiar with some of the vendors already just because I've done previous things with them. So yeah, it was just about finding the right vendor and getting some samples from a few of them and then, talking about it and, making changes and iterations and yeah, that was a process. I would say what took the longest was probably, ooh, I would say what took the longest was trying to figure out what the design was going to be,
Mm.
because we wanted it to be different, but still recognizable. People knew that it was a candle and so yeah, I would say just actually creating the design was probably one of the most time-consuming part. And then yeah, vendor shopping was a bit tough too, but yeah.
It sounds very overwhelming. So I actually really love the approach that you took where you're like, you know what, we're just going to do it messy. We're going to get it out there and then we'll kind
Mhm.
of refine after. Because I
Yeah.
find I'm a bit of a perfectionist myself, honestly. And I was
Mhm.
like, I spend so much time doing it. And then inevitably, 6 to 12 months later, I change it anyway. So I
Yeah.
should have just saved myself 3 months of like minor changes and just done it. And then
Yeah.
recognize that I would change it later anyway. So that's
Yeah.
that's exciting, and it's good that you had all of those kind of connections in place to support that. I would be
Mhm.
like, I don't know, do I need to hire a designer? Like, how does the packaging and stuff work? So
Yeah.
it's really interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely helps. So I have a design background as well, so it definitely helps to
Nice.
have that. And then of course, like I mentioned, the business has been around technically for much longer. So
Hmm.
it was easier to kind of say, oh, well, I knew that this vendor had done this in the past. So,
Hmm.
let's reach out to them. So, but yeah, vendor shopping can be very stressful because even though they give you a sample, and most times you have to order a minimum of 500 of that particular item. They can give you a sample, but then the 500 items could be damaged or poor quality at the same time. So
Mm.
that's, trying to juggle between those two things. It really is tough because you have to go do the back and forth with that, right? And the quality
Mhm.
insurance for sure. So
So do you have any tips to help pick good vendors?
yeah. Yeah. So I would say reviews are important, but they are not always 100% because sometimes people can pay for reviews depending on what platform
Mhm.
you're using. Sometimes, that person reviewed the product, but it was face value and you know, maybe after 2 months the thing broke or what have you, or it doesn't travel well or, you
Mhm.
know. Um, but I would still look at reviews. I think if within that, within 6 months, because at the end of the day, like as a business, you're always growing and expanding, and that means that vendor is also growing and expanding their business too, right? So
Mm.
um they may have negative comments, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad supplier. It could also mean that, they're improving. So looking at the most recent reviews and making sure that they're actually improving and they're growing.
Mhm.
Um, and their, quality assurance has been a priority. Because like I mentioned, you know, I've I've dealt with a vendor actually, the initial time that we had ordered from them, everything in the box broke
Oh
by
no.
the time it came to the house. And it's, you know, obviously first impression was, okay, I'm never going back to this vendor. But they had this particular product that it was very hard to source.
Mm.
And I wanted it so badly. And in any case, we came to an agreement, we had a discussion, um, and she ended up sending a new package over.
Hmm.
And it was a learning experience for them because when they send out the new package, it was because initially it wasn't packed well.
Mhm.
So they took a different approach the second time around. So that's what I'm saying. Like if a company is willing to do that stuff, there's a sign that they appreciate the relationship.
Mm.
So when choosing a vendor, that's also important as well. If they are okay with sampling and they are okay with negotiations, because that means that as your business grows, they will be open to negotiate for cheaper, as well. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and then aesthetics, right? So, that's closely aligned to. I started actually, doing a mood board. That was also part of the process I didn't mention, but
Yeah.
so a mood board of what we wanted the brand to look like.
Mhm.
And so finding a vendor that's closely aligned to that, projects or things that they've produced, was closely aligned to that mood board. As long as it's it makes the process easier because that means that they're able to actually accomplish close to what you actually want to accomplish, right? So
Mhm.
yeah, those were my methods.
That makes sense. And you know what? You're right, especially about finding someone that's willing to work with you because that can often be like the basis of such a strong relationship when they're willing to do that rather than finding someone who maybe has all of those positive reviews, but it's like, no, it is what it is, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
So you actually answered the next question that I had for you, which have you changed your branding or packaging since you got started? And you did. Has it changed multiple times in your 2 years or just that once?
Oh, so for certain products, it goes back to um vendors. So when we started out, like I mentioned, we started out with skincare and realized that certain products weren't exactly resonating with our audience. So we had changed a few of our products. So by
Mm.
default, we had to change packaging.
Hmm.
So after that, when we finally thought of the products that would work well with our audience, which, for example, one of um, our room sprays actually, our packaging changed, I think, 3 times because there was
Wow.
actually, yeah, so there was actually a shortage for that particular style of bottle.
Mm.
We could not find it anywhere. Like there was no, there was nowhere we could buy it. And we finally decided, you know what, we'll just go to a more standardized bottle. It's
Hmm.
not the prettiest, but at least we won't have issues with packaging and, trying to figure out whether we're going to sell this product as a result of not having this, the packaging, right? So
Hmm.
so that changed 3 times. The candles only changed twice.
Hmm.
So the last time was the new branding. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think everything pretty much stay consistent. It will probably change as we continue to grow because I think that's also important to keep adapting.
Hmm.
And like I mentioned, when we started just to kind of throw things there. And yeah, the idea was to progress anyways. So, eventually it will change. And that hopefully will be the last time it changes. Yeah, yeah. Hopefully the last time it changes, if we get, depends on how it if it continues
Hmm.
resonating, etc. But yeah.
So you mentioned a really great point too about how you kind of have to see what resonates with your audience and then adjust accordingly for the room sprays like you were talking about. So how do you go about choosing what products to launch or when it's time to adjust existing products that you have?
Yeah, so when we started, we actually um, created an email list of people that would be interested in testing our products
Oh,
and
okay.
sampling. Yeah, so a lot of our determination was through that. So we had maybe just under 20 people just testing our products and giving us feedback.
Hmm.
So I think with anything, you have to have an outside opinion because sometimes you can be biased about your own product. So I would say in anything, you should probably have whoever you're targeting test your product and let you know what exactly is going to work. We also had um, launched a few things and just kind of saw whether, you know, how often someone clicked into viewing the actual product or purchased it or repurchased it.
Hmm.
We were doing also trade shows slash pop-up shops. So we got to see firsthand, when we had samples out there, if people actually liked the product and what was the first thing they actually went to when they had the options out laid out, right? So yeah, yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I really like those like suggestions and like how you went about that because it wasn't just one way and you're like, okay, this is it. This is
Mhm.
what it's gonna work because you tested it almost with several different audiences. Like you said, when you were at trade shows, that's a different audience than people who were on your email list test groups. You got to see different like demographic backgrounds probably as well.
Yeah.
So that's really neat. I like that. She's like, you're making me want to have a product-based business because there's just so many
Yeah.
different like experiences and things that you don't get as a service-based provider.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot though. I will say it is a lot. What I do think is yeah, you definitely have to plan out each step because it can become overwhelming for sure. Yeah.
So in your first, let's say, year or so, where did you find your bottlenecks in terms of your business? Was it in your production and your branding and figuring out what people wanted? Was it in the actual like marketing and selling of it?
Mhm. Ooh, I would say inventory and quality assurance was yeah, that was probably the toughest parts starting off just because we didn't know what we didn't know. And
Fair.
yeah, so there was a lot of learning, a lot of courses, a lot of trial and error, a lot of purchasing products and testing them because we do make 95% of our products.
Oh.
So actually coming up with the formula, actually testing it out, all of that stuff, it it was very expensive. So that is definitely, I would say that was probably one of the biggest things. And then managing um the quality once it's made, the shelf life, being able to recognize when things are spoiled versus not, things like that. Yeah.
Hmm. It almost sounds like you need to have like a scientific background to figure all of that stuff out. So how did you go about doing that? Did you do it all yourselves? Did you hire experts for that piece of it?
Yeah, so when we started, it was so we consulted a few people within the industry. So we had some help with that, some mentorship with that, and then we also had reached out to uh, some chemists,
Mm,
get formulas so we can test. So yeah, it was a mixture of things. We took courses, so we were better informed. We worked with, chemists to actually come up with formulas. Um, Even just like the base, because a
hmm
lot of these products, they're all coming from a base of a formula and then they're tweaking it. So there was that, and then, like I said, the mentorship for sure. Yeah.
Wow, it sounds like you have very high startup costs then as a product-based business to go through all of those things because I know from personal experiences, even just hiring coaches who are not like expert chemists come with a pretty hefty price tag. So,
Yeah.
how did you, if you don't mind me asking, did you get funding? Did you do this like on a loan? Did you like self-fund your business? How did all of that work for you?
We self-funded.
Okay, good for
Yeah.
you.
We self-funded, but it is very expensive. Uh, we also had applied to a couple of mentorship programs. So we went to one, but I mean, a lot of it was just us. Yeah.
hmm
Yeah.
Okay. So now, as a marketer, obviously, I have some marketing questions. So, who is your target audience or your ideal client, whatever you'd like to call them? And did you find that it changed after you launched your product from what you expected it was going to be?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, our target audience is middle class to upper class. We recognize that someone who is affluent is not necessarily going to gravitate to our brand at its current state,
Mm,
but maybe their kids will.
mm-hmm.
Just based off their personality, based off of the the typical buying habits of them, which is, sustainable luxury,
Hmm.
and especially buying and supporting local businesses. So we really depend on that part of it. When we started, it was middle class. I want to say we weren't fully sure where we wanted to take it, but it definitely was middle class because of a lot of our products was priced around well, the typical price tag.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say middle class to just the cusp of affluent. Nowadays, with inflation, that's kind of shifted, but
Yep.
yeah, I would say that's typically who purchases from us anyways,
Hmm.
but we definitely don't get like affluent old money. We get maybe new money or, people that are, the kids of the affluent crowd for sure. But
Hmm.
yeah.
And when you were dreaming up your business, is that who you kind of anticipated would be the primary consumers of your product?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted
Nice.
something different. I think there's a lot of businesses similar to what I do, to what we do, rather.
Hmm.
There's a lot of candle businesses, there's a lot of skincare businesses, and it was about how do we become different? What can we add as our value proposition or, our selling points? So one of them was sustainability. That was a hot thing. That was important, but also even for myself, I would prefer a zero waste product over something that's not, right? Makes
Hmm.
me feel a little bit better about my purchases.
Hmm.
So there was that. There was also, sorry, I missed that point.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious about your target clients and whether it changed. So it sounds like it didn't. So you went into your business knowing exactly who it was that you were targeting, and you created a
Mhm,
product that was exactly what they wanted, and it's working really
mhm,
well for you, which is great. I was
mhm.
going to ask kind of how you determined the pivot if that wasn't the case, but that's okay.
Okay.
But I'm curious now how you go about marketing your product. Like as a digital service-based provider myself, most of my marketing is either networking at local networking events or it's like digital marketing. So things like social media, like Instagram, Pinterest,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. But I know there's so many more options for product based businesses. So what are you doing and what do you find works really well for you? Maybe what have you tried in the past that didn't work? So,
Yeah. So it's not so different from what you're doing. We do rely a lot on trying to build a community.
hmm.
So that's definitely part of it. We've also worked with influencers. That's actually something that doesn't work for us.
Really?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I will say influencers are great long-term strategies and they're great for bigger businesses. But when you're a small business and, especially since there's so many people saying that they're content creators and
Mm,
influencers, the vetting process for it takes a lot longer, for
mm,
one, and the risk is a lot higher, right? Because when you lose $200 worth of products, it hurts a lot more than a bigger business.
mm,
We've worked with influencers where we've sent products and, maybe paid them or, maybe it was just a complimentary, gifting situation.
hmm,
And the results were almost the same, low quality videos or maybe just a story that barely saw any views or, a one day of a post and then they took it down or maybe they didn't even post at all, right? So
wow.
yeah, so I would say influencing in the past was really, really good because I feel like influencers valued that a lot more. Um, but I don't see a lot of that nowadays. I'm sure there's influencers out there that do still value it. I
Mm-hmm.
do have a couple of friends that, are influencers and they do really well. And they actually, when they have a brand that they're working with, they're actually going out and promoting it. And it's not just half a video or what have you. It's really video story. They're messaging you about it. Like, it's the whole works.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate those types of people, but that has not worked for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's something we'll do in the future. But what we have been doing is reaching out to other businesses and working with them, collaborating with them with either with content. So
Mm-hmm.
they would kind of act like an influencer at that point, or writers. So they're technically on the influencing side, but it's not exactly like an Instagram or a TikTok situation.
Mm-hmm.
So we've done that. That definitely works. We're currently doing a few campaigns with different wellness centers where we um, essentially have like a barcode of our products
Mm-hmm.
in their washrooms. So our products are there, the barcode's there, and if someone says, "Hey, I really like the smell of this thing,"
Mm-hmm.
they easy accessible, they can just scan the barcode and purchase it.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
nice.
so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, the collaboration overall with other businesses have been probably the most beneficial and being in other stores. Um, yeah, so working with other stores like markets and stuff like that to be, you know, a shelf or a rack or what have you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, have you noticed that your marketing mix has changed since you started your business? Like, I know before you mentioned that you were going to trade shows. Is that still
Mhm.
something that you do a lot of, or you've kind of
Yeah.
moved more towards the digital side of it?
So we do still do trade shows, because the biggest thing is awareness still for us. So whether that's digitally or not, awareness is still a big part of our marketing strategy.
Mm-hmm.
We actually took a break last year from trade shows because return on investment was not great.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we've decided that this year we'll go to a few, but we kind of, chalk it up as it's just awareness. We're not doing it for return on investment in
Mm-hmm.
that moment, but just the awareness piece.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's so interesting because I feel like, especially, well, I feel like when people are first starting out, they're like, I don't know how to promote my business. I have like no social media followers. So, trade shows are kind of one of the best ways to do that. But it's interesting to hear
Mhm.
that you say the return on investment isn't great there. So,
Yeah.
food for thought.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed one of the things that's really helped me in the last 6 months or so is to really kind of dial in on my marketing messaging and making sure
Mhm.
that it speaks to my ideal clients so that they understand the benefits of the services that I offer. Do you
Mhm.
guys do something similar for your product-based businesses or for your products? And how do you communicate the value of your products with your customers?
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, our products are really about sustainable luxury, as close as we can get to sustainability, because sometimes it's not completely there.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to reflect that through our branding. So a lot of our bottles are glass reusable. We actually want to create a, a program in the future where you would return your bottles and then we would essentially pay you for it.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
we, yeah, so we haven't fully set that up yet. But yeah, so a lot of our products are reusable. They're glass recyclable, and in terms of luxury, I mean, plastic versus glass just by default, is a lot, you know. Um, and then also with our new branding of our candles, I think the aesthetic of it is a lot more thoughtful than what we had prior, where we kind of just threw it up there. Um, it took a lot of time, a lot of back and forth, and yeah, I just hope people actually see that through the branding. But so far, so good. We've had some really good reviews on it.
Hmm.
And yeah, yeah.
That's great. I'm glad that it seems to be working really well for you. Um, so I guess something else that I'm curious about is pricing because I mean, I struggle with that. I've got a bunch of different services, but I know that that's still very different than offering like full product suites. So how do you go about determining the price point of your products?
Yeah. Well, it goes back to target audience.
Hmm.
So knowing that our target audience is between this range
Hmm.
and understanding their lifestyle and, where they typically shop. So, we've looked at competitors, how they price things, where we're at in our business. Can we actually price it like this? For example, we've seen candles for $600 and at this stage, at this stage, we know we're not there yet. We would
Hmm.
like to be there, you know.
Yeah.
But we understand we're not there yet. And so, we're kind of in this, I wouldn't say middle ground, but I think we're reasonably priced where um, some of our products more of a middle class individual would purchase versus
Mhm.
someone that has a little bit more extra cash to spare, right? So, and we tier our products. So the
Mm.
lowest item that you could buy, I think it's like $6. So
Okay.
it's still very reasonable.
Yeah.
And then our highest product is about, I think it's $120, which again, it's reasonable, but for a candle, you know, it's
Hmm.
it's it definitely is a luxury item, right? So
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay, that's cool. It feels like maybe there was a little bit of trial and error in some of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, it was a lot of, it goes back to what I was saying about the sampling. So
Hmm.
recognizing that, and pricing, what I've realized is so important in terms of how people perceive the value. So, something that's $6, they may look at it like, oh, well, it's probably not that great of a
Mm.
quality versus something that's, $600, you would hope that the quality is a lot more better, right? So I think it's also perceived value, but it goes back to what I said, is that we're not there yet in terms of awareness. I think once we develop the brand and our brand's a lot tighter,
Hmm.
um, we can demand that type of price because now it's a sought after item. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Makes sense. So, what are you working on in the next 6 to 12 months to kind of support and grow your product-based business?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we are going to be going to a lot more trade shows this year just for awareness. So we're going to be doing sampling, a lot more like relationship building and things like that. And we are try to go into a few stores this year. So that is the goal. And just collaborating, like I mentioned, that new campaign, collaborating with a few different wellness centers. We're also looking to work with restaurants as well. I didn't actually think restaurants would be that interested, but we've had a couple of people reach out to us with regards
Oh.
to, yeah, so I'm thinking it's a thing. Think it's a
Fair.
thing. Yeah, but it's funny, I didn't mention this, but prior we were working with a lot of Airbnbs.
Hmm.
So we were supplying toiletries and room sprays and things like that. And so definitely with the change in the economy, Airbnbs are not very I wouldn't say they have as much expendable dollars, as
Hmm.
they did in prior years. Because I think people are kind of fed up about, certain rules that a lot of these Airbnbs have been kind of implementing. So yeah, we shifted from that. So hopefully with this new strategy, we get to where we need to get.
Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Mhm.
So, for someone looking to start a product-based business, what tips or advice would you give them?
Ooh, I would say, I would say if you can, get your products, don't try to start from scratch.
Mm,
If you can get, whether it's the products, whether it's, the business process or outline or, equipment or what have you,
hmm
kind of readily like turnkey if possible. If you can get like a turnkey type of business, I would say probably try that just because it is a lot of, if you're not already privy to the industry, it is a lot of learning the first
mm
year. So you have to be prepared for a year or a couple of years of learning and trial and error and spending a lot of money on products and testing out wicks and testing out, oils and, all of that stuff. So I would say if you are thinking of trying it out, maybe look into someone that does white labeling first and seeing what your options are with that
mm.
or wholesaling. And then you can decide maybe after a couple of years or what have you, that maybe one or two products, um, you know, could be handmade by your company. I would also say with only a couple of products. We started with a full line of products, which definitely made it more expensive. So I would
Mm.
say start with maybe one or two key items and then progressively grow from that. But yeah, I would say that.
Hmm. And that all very much makes sense, but is not things that I would have considered before. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
Now,
for
for
sure.
those people that are listening that are like, this is amazing, I'm really interested in learning more about the products we've spent the last little while talking about. How can they find you online?
Yeah, so you can reach out to us on Instagram. It is Dsarskin, so DSAR skin. And you can actually go on our website. It's www.dsarskin.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Rochelle, and for sharing your product based business expertise with us. I know that I personally learned a lot. I'm thinking now maybe not so much going into the product direction, but at least now I am well informed. So
Yeah,
I appreciate your expertise on the podcast today. Thank you so much.
yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. All right. And thank you to everyone who is listening still. And we will see you all next week on the Go Get Great podcast.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Go Get Great. I hope you found some useful tips and tricks that can help you make life and business work together. If what I said resonates with you, please share it on social media and don't forget to tag at Brittany Miller's socials so that I can celebrate you for taking those first steps towards achieving greatness. Remember, success doesn't happen overnight. It takes dedication, hard work, and a lot of spirit. So don't be afraid to dream big and go after what you want. Keep striving for greatness. You get closer with every step forward, no matter how small they may seem. Until next time, go get great.